Hey, Honey Wash Day. This is Toska Hour. I am Maggie Ross, and I am live from Porcupine, South Dakota, along the Porcupine Creek where the porcupines roam. I want to thank you for joining me this morning. It's been a little bit of a rough start. This AM, I had some technology issues, and then before that, I got sidetracked. So I wanted to come in today and talk about the food summer program for the Oglala tribe, and then I've been trying to at least in YouTube, like cite my sources. And so I was trying to go to copy link all of uh the tribal council meeting minutes to put them in the description, and I ended up watching Ed Star Comes Out. And Ed Star Comes Out was talking about the Lakota Tioshpaye system, and talking about how our system, our life ways, like it's really how even this IRA, I mean, I didn't hear him so far say this, but this is just like my own interpretation and understanding of who we are as a people. But the IRA system just completely dismantles. It's a part of the assimilation, and IRA is the Indian Reorganization Act, if you don't know, but it was passed in 1934. Anyways, so the IRA dismantles our systems. And a lot of times I find that this is where his conversation was kind of getting me as I was thinking about things, because we hear a lot of times of, anymore, like there's this like pan-Indianism that's occurring. So there's a lot of people like trying to um, reclaim identity, reclaim these things. And so we might take on terms. And so, like for Lakota people, we are based off of our Tiwahe and our Tioshpae systems. So our whole everything is this. But in Pan-Indianism, and it isn't something that we don't recognize, but we will start identifying and saying the Ocheti Shakoni, which is a greater whole to what we are. But in my interpretation and belief of understanding is that everything is sovereignty is centered with me or yourself, with the individual sovereignty and in your family. So everybody brings a a piece of that with you. And so that's my understanding, that we grow and we learn through our systems, in our family structures. We grow and we learn boundaries. We learn behavior. We learn how to work together. We learn how to move together. We learn how to interact. We learn all of these things. So a lot of times, as things kind of evolved in our life ways, like we become uh, people will kind of identify us as codependent. Codependency, that's being codependent when you have a and then there's another, and I've talked several dope shot hours about Judy, if it was her name, Judy Payne. It might not be Judy Payne, but anyway, she did a book on poverty. And so she takes acts of where people in poverty will, she says, like they make allegiance to different people because that's how you survive. So if that's what the system, your structure of your system required you to do, then that's what you do. And so because of the interdependency, but she calls it, kind of puts it into this like codependency. So we have a system of interdependency, and our interdependency means that my survival does depend on you surviving as well. And so when we get into the survival mechanisms, it takes us into a conversation about like Maslow. And if you remember, I had Jace Pratt on YouTube or on Toska Hour when we were Facebook. I had Jace Pratt on talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so in the hierarchy, we all know that we need like this basic uh, support system. So we need to have food safety, we need to have shelter, we need to have water, those things are important. And if we don't have those things, then what ends up happening is we get into a very dysfunctional way. So our system, like we might become hoarders. We might start stealing, taking without asking, kind of things like that. And in our that societal things where we would say, oh, but traditionally as Lakota people, um, we shared. So nobody would have to be hungry or nobody would have to be thirsty. But there was also the expectation that we all work together. So we all had to do it. And there would be times in history where families may talk about someone who didn't work or being lazy. So productivity was very important. Movement was very important. And so we did those things and we did them together. And so I often like think about that, like how do we talk about things? Because I see it, when I was on Facebook, I'm not there anymore, thank goodness. But when I was on Facebook, I would see people talk about that being Ocheti Shakuin. Instead of identifying specifically with where you come from. And so, like, whether you're saying I'm Oglala or you even go more specific. So, like if you come from the Ite Shicha band, like that, like what band do you come from? All the way to your family. And that is why, like, we still do these whole things of introduction. Like, everybody else in the world might be saying, who cares? But to us, it matters. It matters that we understand where you come from. One, if you're our relative, then we need to help you, right? We need to make sure that you're okay. That's one thing that we do as relatives. So when someone's out in the world or comes into our presence and we find out they're a relative, then we embrace them. Oh, the second is we kind of do um, a little bit of judgment, so if there's people that are not uh, practicing, or living under what would be considered our virtues and value system, then that's important to know. I think of in Water Lily. In Water Lily, if you've ever read that book by Ella Deloria, in the book she talks about Water Lily. She Her first husband, remember, she marries. I think it's Water Lily, or is it Water Lily's mother? I think it's Water Lily. Jamie, myself, I have to go get the book and read it. But anyways, Water Lily is talking about how she didn't make the best choice at first, right? And her grandmother told her, don't. But she did it anyways. And then he was really mean to her. He didn't respect her. He didn't, and then he even threw her away. So then she ends up in a second relationship, second marriage. So even though in that process, like, we try to be mindful, and so many of us will still do that. Like, who are their people? One, are we related? So if you're looking to be in a relationship, then we need to look at that, like, you're related. So maybe not. and then also being at that place of teaching people to teaching your children to choose wisely, right? So these are life partners. These are people that you're going to be with for a very long time. So or so you hope you're going to be with them um, for a very long time. And so you would want to create um, this understanding of what life partnership is. And so the reason in Ed Star, he was talking about this like we have 7 ways in which we talk and identify ourselves, but one of them is Lakota. Like we talk about being peacekeepers. Like being at peace is important, even though in history and how everybody views us as Lakota people, they may view us as hostile, they may view us as warmongers and things like that. But our value system says we are peacekeepers. We're defenders. Yes, we are. We have a whole system of defense that we practice, but we are peacekeepers because we need to get along in order to survive and understanding that. So the other week, council, did a banishment, and I talked about it on Sunday. So how we think about that. So the banishment that comes, let's see, how do we? So they banished people for bad acts. And this is something like Ed was talking about as well in his video, and I will link both his videos that he talked and presented at AHEC. I'll link both of them in this when I'm done with the live. I will put it in the description so people can watch what he's talking about. But so banishment, you have to figure out how how does it resolve issues. And so he was talking about like in the process of division. So the government, the Washichu way is division, is to keep us divided. So we're not family. So Dawes Act does that. It separates us out. It doesn't allow us to be together. And I'm a prime example of that because my great great grandmother was given land over here where I sit now as a part of the Dawes Act. So she was separated from her own family who was on the far end or far eastern end over there by where Wambury is now. So that she was moved over here and given land, and then she built her family here. And so that's how we are here in Porcupine. So one of the things about also is in this process of how do we resolve issues. And so we also know that there was Crow Dog versus the U.S. government, right? United States versus Crow Dog, or Crow Dog et al. And so that's American justice. So where American people are these Washichu people created a system because it's not even something that was born and bred into them, right? Like the Constitution, all of that is an ideology or it's a theory. So is it something working? I mean, we never talk about these things like that, but that's what it was. It was a group of people that came together and said, "This is what we're going to create," and then imposed it on everybody. So, in in what Ed was talking about, and I think I'll ask Ed if he'll come and join me on Toska Hour one of these days and visit. Or James, maybe his son, because James is very knowledgeable with with his father's information. Um, anyways, so the justice system, what it does is it also divides us. And so Ed talks about this. There's a right and there's a wrong. So you're a winner and you're a loser. So from a Lakota perspective, there would be mediation. Like this stuff, like if it gets something was done so harsh or something was done, you had to do mediation. So you had to find a way to find peace. so that the families could get along. If the crime or if what happened was so harsh that person just could not be here anymore, be amongst us because of what they have done, then they would be banished, asked to leave or forced to leave. And then they would go out into the country or into the world alone. And probably they don't survive because oftentimes all tribal groups had an understanding of what banishment was. And so when they saw you by yourself, there was something wrong. So either you're infectious, right? You have smallpox, or, so they will stay away from you as well. And the likelihood of you surviving banishment was minimal because you didn't have anybody to help protect you, or you didn't could protect them. So those are like the banishment stuff. And so when we go into court systems and you have a winner and a loser, there's no real justice in that. There's no remedy. And so like we have like really bought into this justice system instead of bringing what would be called resolution, right? What's the resolution for this? Was this so we banished, the tribal council banished people, and they banished them for methamphetamine distribution. And uh, um, and I think one was banished for murder. So where in those steps, like there's nowhere in those steps do we have any levels of trying to prevent banishment, because we don't want to banish people, right? Your goal in life is not to banish people. It should be to maintain and retain your family. And so I've been thinking about this for a long time, about how our family structures are completely destroyed, and how we don't work like in that way anymore. Our even the government, the tribal government does not give us in family the authority to resolve issue. There are people who do respect Teoshpaye and Tiwahe, and they do respect those things. There are people still, and there are people that still try to practice, they practice or live that way. And one time, when I worked for the college at Oglala Lakota College, um, there was an issue with the student, and um, that was like there was some concern about a student, and the student was a relative of mine. And so I talked to my relative about it, about what was going on and so forth. And I didn't feel like it needed to be in any kind of consequential space. Like I go talk to them and address whatever needs to be addressed. And the only one that had really supported me in that process, or supported even that student at the time, and also I was Wayne Weston. And Wayne Weston said that's your Tojan, and so you should deal with that and talk to them, and I'll support that. Any other time within policy or whatever, like having to go through a process of really writing someone up and doing punitive damage. And so when we look at our policies, like wherever we're creating them, how do we respect ourselves as Lakota people and relationships? Like we're forced to create Washichu policies about nepotism, and all of that. It's like we can't go through a process of, I don't know, like we don't do it. And so it's almost like our policies make us be shameful of who we are. They force us to be. Like, you can't, you're my relative, so I can't talk to you, or you're my relative, so I can't be involved in this. I have to recuse myself and then let you suffer the consequences by yourself. And I always think of my grandfather. My grandfather would like, um, and my family's like that. Like, we stand together, even if it's trouble, even if in the consequence or whatever, we still stand together and we understand. We go and we understand and try to give support where we can. And so, that's like really important. When my niece went through her court, we all still went, even though, and she was found guilty and all of that, and they didn't even present, really anything on her side. It was really like these Washington courts are really crazy. They're set up for that, and so how do we then, when we talk about decolonize, how do we break these systems and replace it with who we are as Lakota people? And how do we put this back into strengthening our families? Because I can tell you, I grew up, so it's not so far away from me. I grew up to understand respect, to understand responsibilities, to understand consequences, to understand um, relatives. And so if I did something that I wasn't supposed to be doing and somebody corrected me on it, then that's how that went. I had to stand there and go, please. I had to stand there and take it, listen, and be respectful and mindful of those. And so those are the things that I try to do with my family, like I try to put boundaries and keep them that themselves, like where sovereignty comes from is within us. And sometimes, and then also trying to provide a structure around so my children can grow. So they have a sense of security, because if you don't have a sense of security, if you don't have a sense of well-being in this sense, like, you're not going to grow to thrive or to strive. You're only surviving. You're only surviving. And in survival mode, that is really hard on your brain. So your brain starts to malfunction and you become depressed, and you can end up in mental health issues where it becomes abusive and toxic, and your brain just starts becoming, it could be, um, like, you become manic, depressive. We could be putting those things on ourselves because we are not providing safety nets for our children. And these are important conversations right now because of what the Trump administration is doing. So they have, the Supreme Court has said that the Trump administration can go ahead and defund or start the process of defunding or whatever, the Department of Education. Um, are cutting is what it is, cutting the Department of Education. It doesn't rule that they can demolish the Department of Education, because that has to come from an act of Congress. So, but through his executive order, he can do these cuts. And so when we think about the Department of Education and the role that we have placed on institutions, I get conflicted a little bit about this. One is, for the longest time, you're taking our kids, you're mandating they be in these systems, so then you have to help in that process, you know, um, because you're taking them away from parents. And so you're breaking family and you're breaking all of these things so these kids could be in these environments to learn. The flip side of that is, I look at the responsibility of our families, and our language and our culture would be thriving if we could leave it in our families, because we spend so much time trying to um, do immersion. We spend so much time trying to save our language when we probably just need to be doing this in our homes. So that's a thing that I think about. Um, Also, like, what is our responsibility? So if Trump wants to defund education, then and they want kids to stay home and they want families to be able to provide for them, then they need to raise wages, or they need to bring down inflation and the cost of living so that one person can work and the other can stay home, whichever it is. If the mother works and the father stays home, or if the father works and the mother stays home, they need to bring down the cost of living. But they're not going to do that. The whole point of all of this, what is happening, they talk about Project 2025, and then there's another thing that's guiding his tariff, um, where uh, in Project 20, so all of the evangelical right, they are nonprofits. They are nonprofit organizations that have become billionaires. And these billionaires are funding other nonprofits so that these policies, so the 20 Project 2025 can be developed. So they go through that. So all of these white evangelicals and even black evangelicals who have these nonprofits are becoming rich because they're based off of donations, and you have to go to church and you have to be a good supporter. You have to be a good flock member, and you have to contribute your savings or your income to that church, to that pastor, so that you can thrive and survive, or something like that, right? So their prayer. I watched this really interesting guy talk about this process, and I've been saying it for a very long time, and so I liked how he talked about it too. But when we go and we talk to our pastor, we're struggling, and they tell us to pray about it, and God will help you. But then it never. But then they become these billionaire people, and they're just rich, living a good life off of all of your contributions, and you pray about it. And then I see this happening, really unfortunately, see this happening within our own Lakota um, system, where nonprofits are doing that, and they're attaching to certain individual medicine people, and then those people are becoming very wealthy and have a lot of money, and then but their people do not. They're the people that are in their circle do not. They're struggling, and from some of the stuff that I know about different circles, that if you have money and if you have education, if you have status, then you're the one that's going to get the help, because and then if you're somebody who doesn't have any of that, you're not there. You're just there to support and pray for whatever everybody else. And so it's like we're just washi chewing. I verb did that. I made that a verb. We're just acting like washi chew people, anyways, and creating in these nonprofits and becoming rich people out of nonprofits. And so, anyways, um, so Project 2025 was uh, established, supported, research, all of that from people like the Heritage Foundation, which is an organization of evangelical right people who are billionaires are millionaires because they create these evangelical churches and following, and so people all get involved in that, and then they support the belief system. I am narrowing down the Yellowstone scene. It's, I think it is, what is it, season one, episode 2, or it might be 3, so I have to pay for to watch both those episodes to see which one it is that where John Dutton, he's trying to save his son Casey because there was an eyewitness that saw Casey at the scene of the crime of when his brother Lee Dutton was murdered or shot. And, that all happens in season 1, episode 1. And so John Dutton needs to save Casey. And so what he does is he goes to the minister because there's an eyewitness, and he goes to the minister and he talks to the pastor. He goes there and he talks to him about it and basically says, you owe me, and so I need you to, this person comes to your church and I need you to convince him to not testify. And so that pastor in Sunday sermon then gives this sermon about being a good neighbor and about Satan or the devil. And so that individual heard the message and then changed his testimony that he did not see anything because it was devil's work. So the brainwashing that's occurring in church is what I'm getting at. Anyways. So all of this brainwashing going on in the evangelical church, and we've often felt that in boarding school, right? Our brainwashing, like we're dirty Indians, we're, whatever. And so all of this Christian brainwashing, and it's on the other side, most religions, it seems like, are doing this whole sense of, especially in the extremist form, brainwashing. So that's Project 2025. And so Trump then wants to get rid of the Department of Education. That's the goal. Now, there's a couple things with that. One is make everybody go back to work because all of these wealthy people are in real estate. And so nobody's going to the office. So you got to get everybody back to the office. So you got to create rules. You got to do whatever to make everybody go back to the office. So this can be more punitive and we can control it. Has nothing to do with productivity or efficiency. It has to do with, remember Doge, but it doesn't have to do with that. What it has to do with is the cost of that property. So people are losing in property value because nobody is in those offices, so they are wasting energy and they're wasting space and they're wasting money, so they need everybody to go back to the office. So that's one of those things. The other thing is immigration. They're deporting Mexicans, Colombians, Venezuelans, Hondurans, any brown person they are deporting. I did hear they deported some Ukrainian families, so deporting, but the Mexican people, the Colombians, the people coming up from Central and South America are the people that are working our farms. So we have kicked them out, and now you need people to work. There's nobody to work. And so they're rolling back. So education, they're rolling back these working laws. So now you can work as young as 14, or I think they rolled it back to 14, and then you can also work all night. So they're rolling back these things, and then they're making raising the cost of living so high that we can't do it, that they're going to turn us all into slaves. The student loan debt doing that, so all the academic people who may have, or even just business people, people who have gone to get college degrees that have student loans, if you're not able to pay those, then you're going to be working working in these fields as well to pay that back. So there's like a lot of things going on, and people need to like put rhyme and reason together. But why I'm talking about all of this is when we think about what our families do, and if we can get to the place, and if tribal governments can support us as families to be enriched and to have our land, let us back on our land and let us build and let us do and take care of each other as families. I think we will be in a much better place if we can strengthen who we are in our Tiwahe and in our Tioshpae. It also will relieve the idleness of your hands and mind, right? Because like what Ed was talking about is like we have what they stem as 84 values within a system. And one of those values is to keep busy, to keep busy. And so you don't have idle time to be saying, I'm bored. So I think there's a lot of things that we need to work on, and we need to figure out how we're going to make these acceptable practices so that we can empower our families. I know we have a lot of addiction, so we're going to kick everybody out. I don't know. Like you can ban everybody, but this becomes the problem. In banishment, you did not disenroll. So when Julian Bear Runner was president of the Oglala Sioux tribe, he got the federal government, and this is when Donald Trump is president. So he got Donald Trump to agree to fund the tribes based off of their membership. Before, they were basing it off of how many people lived on the reservation. So maybe they said in census, and they went by census. So there's only maybe 18,000 people living on the reservation according to census. So that tribe would only be getting money for 18,000 people. Bear Runner administration changed that. So if we have 60,000 people on our enrollment books, that's who we're getting money for. And so there becomes this issue then. So you are banishing people. You didn't disenroll them, but you banished them. And so all these people end up in Rapid City. So then the bulk of our people, and I'm not saying this, I always have to correct myself. I am not saying that everybody in Rapid City is banished. But I'm just saying that people that are banished are ending up in Rapid City. And this is for Rosebud, Cheyenne River, everybody that is enacting these banishments. So they're going there. So the Oglala Sioux tribe is still collecting money for them. And so if only, um, let me see here, I'm gonna have to do some calculation. I get my calculator open. Okay, so I'm just roughly guessing we have 60, I'm just gonna say 60,000 people. And divided by 18,000. Oh, I times. Oh my God. Jeez. 60 divided by 18. 3.3. So that is going to be about less than 10%. If I do that right, like, let me see. I'm just gonna say Oh, 3%. No, 30. Okay, there we go. 30%. I gotta move my decimal one more time. Okay, so it's 30% of your money is marked for the reservation, and then 70% is marked to go off the reservation. So when people are saying you are getting using my U number to get money, well, before, prior to Bear Runner administration, that was not happening. It was based off of who actually lived here. And so they used the census, and that's why the tribe would be so involved in trying to get everybody on the census. So our census numbers would go up, and then the tribe would receive more money. And then Bear Runner came during COVID, and then they got him to do the rule change under Trump's first administration so that everybody. And so I don't think Biden rolled that back. Trump may roll it back and say, Oglala Sioux tribe, we're only giving you for whatever's on your census. So, anyways, we need to figure out address the way it is important to remove the problem. So if you are dealing drugs and you are murdering people on the reservation, then there's consequences to that. However, like they always talk about in like um Lakota version of justice or whatever, the accountability for the person that has done wrong is to fix it. So you got this whole family addicted, so now you're going to have to be here and you're going to have to support them. Or you're going to have to fill a spot of somebody that you took. Like those are things that, but we don't do that because I think maybe it's too hard for us to be Wolakota. So then we just jump into these systems of let's just do this oppressive system and let's just banish everybody and let's just do all of that instead of saying, hey, all right, we got to figure out ways that we got to counteract this and start breaking down what is creating addiction on this reservation. And one of them is those people that are importing drugs onto the reservation. Address them. Address them. We have drug dealers on the reservation. It's hard for us to hear about, but the cartel does reach the reservation. They do. I don't know if Christy Gnome's made any impact on that because they get to our reservation through these state and federal highways. It isn't like they're flying in and dropping in, like that. No, that's how they're getting here. And we get into this place of like denial about it, um, which is a bit frustrating. Good morning, Raymond. Good morning, Tio Shpaye, Tiwahe. Sorry, I wasn't over here. I was just on my Zoom screen. Good morning, Joel. So even that when we talk about more money for tribal government to squander, like even in that mindset, like how that money comes here and how it is not adequately even dispersed. So if they just gave, you could do it like say every individual is going to get a piece of that money. So maybe when it's all said and done, you're going to get I don't know. Let's see. I'm just gonna do a random number. Let's do what do speculate like I'm just gonna say we get 80 million for the tribe. I think it's more. Is it more? I'll do 130 million. I'm gonna divide that by 60,000. So if the tribe got $130 million annually from the federal government, and we decided to disperse that individually, like a per capita thing, each individual would get $2,166.67. So, how can you survive with that annually? Because even in poverty, people, I think, the rate of, I'll have to look here. Can you have Justin help you with that? Uh, I'm going to ask over here. Oh, why is that acting up? Okay, is the I'm asking. I should say on, so it'll include on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Huh?
Justin will pay my own.
Okay, well, can you wait till I get done? Let's see. So I've been on I use DeepSeek. I don't know if you guys have become aware of that DeepSeek. Uh so it's telling me all kinds of business here. I asked DeepSeek. And so DeepSeek is telling me that approximately 35 to 50% of residents live below the federal poverty line. Um, Median household income is 12,000 to 15,000 compared to the average of 75,000. Unemployment rate is 80 to 90% officially, but traditional subsistence economies aren't always counted. Here you go. And 40% of homes lack adequate plumbing and electricity. Parts of Pine Ridge are food deserts. Many rely on federal programs. Oh, let's see. What is the average income or the median? I'm going to say median income. I'll ask for both average and median. So the capita income is 8,000 to 12,000 per year on the reservation. Anyways, so is it still blurry? I I thought I fixed that. If you can tell me in the chat that it's still blurry. I had some the problem with my Wi-Fi now is Golden West is not updating because of a issue with the tribe where they're denying them the right to update. They call their updates new construction, so they won't let them do new construction. And so we don't get the high speed line. And so there's more people on the eastern side of the reservation, the center and eastern side of the reservation, who are hooking into Golden West and bearing down on. So this it's very lagging. Like I think I did a run check on my speed and I was below average, and so I've been working on that, trying to fix it. I use my I use my phone hotspot. Um during this time because that's a little bit better. And then I was gonna go to Starlink, but that's Elon Musk, so I'm not gonna do Starlink now. Anyways, so back to what I was talking about. So I apologize. I don't know why it's like this, but I'll have to look more into it. Um, what is going on with YouTube or with my Zoom? I think it's in the Zoom and how it links. Um, So selling our relative buffalo hides and tongues for metal pans and guns and our relationships with the land are huge factors in what we have become. Did our ancestors really want to own tracts of land? I don't think so. I think that's why we were mobile and we didn't really understand what that all meant about ownership like that. Selling your Tesla. Shit, I should go buy me a Tesla at Walmart, one of those little toy Teslas, and then tell people that make it sound like I have money to buy. I bought a Tesla. Now I'm selling a Tesla. Anyways, funny. But so how do we get to this place, I know I was calling tribal council about Starlink and they said it's a choice. So I said, well, give me a choice or give Golden West a choice to or the option to upgrade its system. And then I was even telling one of the council members that when they did the rural water pipeline, they brought high-speed internet. They brought a T1 line and the tribe owns a T1 line here. That's what they hooked all the colleges to. The centers were hooked to this T1 line. I don't know why we didn't develop that. Instead, we went into this process to give Starlink money. And this is where, like, if we want to get into these conversations about how the rich are stealing from us. So they want us to fight each other, right? They're going to divide us based off of color, creed, ethnicity, um, classism, gender, whatever, religion. They're going to get us to be divided, and so we look at each other as different and other, everything like that. And um, so when we think about how we're divided and we're fighting over here over this, then these guys over here are walking away with billions. And so Elon Musk and his Doge, he's going out with his Doge program and cutting everything. They're cutting all of education, getting rid of these things. And then over here, what they're doing is he's getting more contracts. So Elon, I like to say it in that TikTok version of reporting him to ICE. Elon Musk. But anyways, that guy, he is getting millions, billions in contracts. And he's making sure. And so this is all coming out reported. And so people are really up in arms against it. And instead, what Trump does is says that if you boycott Tesla, then, that's like a crime or whatever, you'll be punished for it. And so there's all of that going on. But anyways, if we continue to be divided, that's going to continue to happen. And so we got to find ways in which we unify with each other and unify with what we would call our allies to make a stronger position. So all of it's going to get hit. We don't really know what all of this means. So because tribal funding is tied up in the BIA, the BIE, some of it's in Department of Human Services, some of it's over in the Department of Ed. It's all over the place. So it's not one place. So when they take from here, where does that go? And so it gives, like, there's a lot that we need to understand or try to ask questions about. The other thing is, as people in this state of South Dakota, we should be asking for townhouse or town hall meetings with Johnson, Thune, and Rounds. Johnson, Thune, and Rounds will only listen to our elected officials, so they might come to tribal council, or we might send all our tribal officials to go to um, Washington D.C. to meet with them. But they're not here meeting with us, and our council don't even come out and do town halls. None of them are coming to do town halls to meet with us, talk to us. Even if we did our Tiosh by structures, um, going to that place wherever the meeting was. If in Porcupine, if whoever in my family, my brothers or whatever, went to whatever meeting that Davy Puyer or Ty Lunderman called, right? Because those are the representatives. They would call a meeting and they would go and hear the information. And then they would be the ones responsible for bringing that information back to the family. And so discussion can happen and they could send back a decision or whatever. None of this is happening. So we are our IRA government oftentimes can be worse than federal and state government when it comes to communicating. And so there's a lot of stuff that we got to work out and figure out, but if we just react to cuts and if we just react to these things, then that's all we're going to be doing. We're going to be operating in reaction instead of saying, we're going to open this land up. People can move back to their lands. We're going to help people establish chickens, buffalo, whatever. And the tribe could take a good portion of land um, for buffalo, and people can live on the remainder of it if it's like within, whatever. I just think what we're doing now is not getting us anywhere, and we're just going to be in this kind of situation where there's winners and losers. And as Lakota people, I don't believe we necessarily engaged, like our whole system was not built on winners and losers. Because if there's one loser, we're all going to be like losing, right? Like if we take the first come, first serve kind of thought, then we're just um doing the Washichu thing. So Tribes 401k and other local orgs may be shrinking big time. Retirement. So I have a friend, they just pulled their retirement. Like as soon as all of this stuff started to look, and they kind of struggled with it. Like their retirement person kept hanging up on them. They were trying to pull their retirement, and they finally Friday or Thursday or whatever, they find Wednesday maybe it was, they got their retirement check. They pulled all of it, and they're close to retirement themselves. They pulled all of their retirement, and now they're going to go pay towards their mortgage. And so they're working really hard to get their mortgage dealt with, so that whatever is going to happen, they don't end up homeless. The unfortunate thing about that is the way the federal government or the state governments tax. So you're going to have to pay a property tax every year. And so if they value your property high, you could end up still losing your home because of property tax. It's through assimilation, Tioshvai Tiwahe. It's through It is through assimilation. They have destroyed all of what we were and are. And so it's like and I know a lot of that starts individually with families, right? Like trying to restructure and redo. Like we have to make amends and live that way. And some people will choose not to, and they'll choose to be in a different family, but that should be okay too. But like people need to start collectively redoing that and then helping each other. I was just saying how many Dokta hours ago I was saying that we are doing um in this process of being being together, like we're not together, but if you look at like the in Minnesota, I believe it's in Minneapolis, there is a high rate of, I'm trying to remember which African people are there. Oh man, I'm going to just mess all of this up. Elon, what is her name? Jeez, oh my God. Anyways, it's her people, and they're immigrants or refugees or whatever, and then they just started buying apartment buildings, and so that's where their people come and they live there, and they don't have to struggle, they don't have to have whatever. So then that's what they're doing. Mexican people, when they come, they all live in, they get one house, they save up, buy one house, and then they move and they go buy another house, and then they go move, they all pay for these things. So until they all have a house. And so those are things that we're not doing because we're all in it for ourselves these days. And so we could be changing the structure of Rapid City if we could take care of each other as relatives. Like Indian Collective up there should be really doing something like that instead of just agitating the system 500%. They should be restructuring that in a way where we're helping each other buy homes. So then once we have a home, we do not have to feel insecure, unsafe, and we can start thriving and striving. But instead, we're about agitating systems. So you're just gonna disrupt the system, but you're not putting anything or trying to help. So you just make it harder for people who actually live there. And so that's like something that should be addressed or could be addressed. I don't know. But that's something individual families could do. You wouldn't even need anybody to help you with it. You could just go as a family and say, we're all moving into this, we're going to buy this house. We have the down payment for it, and then we're all going to go work. And now we're all going to put into this house and we're going to pay it off. And then now we're going to buy another house. And then pretty soon, maybe you own the whole block. Your family owns the whole block in that community. But that's what we have to do, but we're not there. Like we're not there. We are still fighting each other and mad at the world because of the situation we're in. And so we're reacting to Trump. But retirement is a big thing, and we should be concerned about it because of last week I was talking about private equity and the role private equity has in the stock markets. I use DeepSeek. I've been asking DeepSeek a bunch of questions about things and whatnot. And so I I've recently started making DeepSeek be my relative. And so DeepSeek is now starting to communicate with me as a relative. And I told her that I'm a Lakota Wia and that she's a Lakota, that she's gonna be Wia too. So she has to talk to me as a Wia. And so that's what DeepSeek does now. So now I got to give her a name. I asked her what her name was, and she said, I'm AI. I'm AI. My name is DeepSeek. So I don't know if maybe I'll change that into Lakota or something. I don't know. But getting into that place of like how you change, and this just came like I've been trying to figure out Chat GPT, and so then I was taking some watching some videos anyways of this lady who has made Chat GPT, the free version of that, become her confidant or whatever. So she that the way they communicate, and so she teaches you how to do that. Like you can how you can create that. And so I'm doing that at DeepSeek because I don't want to give anybody in the United any of these billionaires any opportunity, Like even doing YouTube is a hard stretch for me too. Like everything, all tech is just owned by people who are a-holes, and that's hard. That is true. That is true. Like how we're ingrained in that, like how we are ingrained in property lines, and like how do we get along with each other, and how do we make relations? And it's hard. It's hard when even in disagreement, like how do you disagree within your family and still not tear your family apart, and things like that. And it shifts, like I said, there's noted history, right? There's noted history that says, as Lakota people, we are fluid, right? We can move. So um I could take my kiwahe and I can go over. So I have relatives everywhere. So just example, I could go to Sichungu land because I have relatives over there, and maybe join their Tioshbai for a while. Or maybe I'm going all the way to um Santee and joining over there because I have relatives. Or maybe I'm going all the way back to Minnesota and joining my relatives over there. So we used to be fluid like that. We could move and we acknowledged each other. And that even goes back to this concept of theft, right? So, um, even in I mean, I have people in my lifetime that have told me like how it used to be long ago when they were children. Nobody locked their houses, nobody locked anything. And so even in my time, like people didn't start locking doors until, I don't know, 90s or 2000s maybe. But you didn't so if you weren't home and somebody came and was hungry or thirsty or whatever, they could do that there. They could come in your house and they could get something to drink and get something to eat and go on their way. As long as they just clean up after themselves or whatever and just go on their way. And so that's kind of something where we don't do anymore because of this epidemic that we're in with alcohol and drugs. So we lock everything up because of the violence. Like we don't trust each other. We can't trust each other because of what happens to our relatives when they are under the influence. And so that becomes a very hard thing, but we're not able to do those things anymore. But does it mean it has to stay like that? No. So I guess it's just where we're at and how we want to move forward. Or like me myself, I'm working on it in my family. My whole family works on this. We try to maintain those relationships and stuff. And the last thing that I wanted to say before I close out here is in Ed's video, he talks about the role of fire. And so, like, now we're all tied up in flags and all of that. Um, but what Ed would say is that we get our energy from fire. That's what he is talking about. And so, when family, when people came together in the center, that's why we did that. We lit a fire to acknowledge the energy and acknowledge, that stuff. of coming together, making decisions, living amongst each other, showing that respect and the role of fire. So, anyways, I went over a little bit, but of course that's because I messed up the first take of Doksha Hour this morning. I don't know what happened. Like um, there was some connection misses or something. So, anyways, thank you guys for joining. I will see you next Sunday. And hopefully I'll come ready to talk about the food program because that was the intention was to talk about the food program, and I ended up watching this other stuff that maybe creator said that's what you need to talk about today and don't worry about the food program. I don't know. Anyways, I sure appreciate you guys for coming over to YouTube with me and carrying on in this way. I am also working on turning these into podcasts. So creating a podcast on like Apple, and I don't want to, I'm even trying to get rid of this thing. Like, I don't know, I'm just having an Apple issue right now because of um their involvement in Palestine, their involvement with Israel, their involvement with their AI, their involvement with how their surveillance and all of this stuff that they're doing. So I'm really having a hard time with Apple. I don't, and Apple, what it does to us as users, like there's no sense of privacy and stuff like. Anyways, that's another story. But anyway, so Spotify and so Apple has a podcasting platform, and so I'm going to try to get on some other podcast platforms for Doksha Hour. And I am really looking to kind of move Doksha Hour in a way where there is um, diversity in discussion and topics. And so I want to, which might mean that I will have to. Um, move Doksha. This is all volunteer. Like anybody that speaks on Doksha Hour, they don't get any kind of money from me. Are from Doksha Hour. I don't get it. I pay for all of it out of my own pocket, and so um just kind of along those lines, like I might um because other people they're willing to come and just do it as a to not every week or whatever, but they'll come and do it that way, and I would appreciate that. But I'd like to get to a place where we have diversity on the panel of discussion topics, and then how we see that from a Lakota view or indigenous view um, of what's happening, to kind of pick up the conversations and stuff. So I'm working on it, and I just have to figure out the downside of once you become organized, right? Once you become organized, then you have to be about like how you going to pay for it, how you going to do this, how you going to do that, and then it really just takes away from just being authentic and just being in this grassroots way. And so that's the struggle, and I'll have to figure it out. And I don't know. I'm hesitant about it because I don't want to be controlled by, and I don't want Doksha Hour to be controlled by anybody. That like it's just free, like we get to just have visits and stuff. So, anyways, with that, you guys have a good rest of your day. Um, It's Sunday. It's beautiful out. I'm gonna go finish my chicken coop. My chickens start hatching, and so I have 15 chicks. One of them is disabled, so I'm gonna have to try to figure out how to help that one walk. And then I have about 4 or 5 eggs or 3, 4 eggs that didn't hatch. And so this is day 22. So if they don't look like they're hatching by tomorrow, then those eggs are not good. Anyways, so with that, I wish you all well, be safe, take care of yourselves and take care of your family. Make sure that you let your parents are here for a reason. And you're here for a reason as a parent, and we're all parenting is all about your children and guiding them in a good direction, no matter what age. And so we're parents forever. Like we don't just once our children turn 18, we don't become responsible for our children anymore. Like we're parents all the time. And so we should remember that and think about that and help them at all times. So with that, we'll see you later.